Well, by now, you probably know that we are talking about The Wizard of Oz today. Anybody ever heard of The Wizard of Oz? How many of us have seen the movie a gazillion times? Yes, absolutely. But I do have to say really quick, though, that my grandkids are here today, and one of the things that excites me about this is that they've never seen me do what I do, because they're always in the Sunday school. So I'm really excited they actually get to see what I do today. It just dawned on me. I thought it was pretty cool. Okay, Frank Baum wrote the book, The Wizard of Oz. And I love this little story where, because he was a writer, he wrote a lot of books. And so he wrote The Wizard of Oz, and they were really struggling financially. And so his wife said, honey, I need you to go to the publisher and just ask him for $100, just $100. So Frank goes to the publisher and he said, I need $100. So the publisher writes the check out, gives it to him. Frank just puts it in his pocket. He gets home and he hands it to his wife, and she opens it up, and it was for several $1,000, which was amazing. So it was really, the beginning of the movement of what the Wizard of Oz has become. Now, I looked up a lot of different things on interpretation, but really what I resonated the most with was a book called The Wizard of Us by Jean Houston. Jean Houston is a revolutionary evolutionary teacher. And she is spirited. She is progressive. She's just phenomenal. And we actually, in our Soulful Saturdays, we've watched 2 of her videos. When we start Soulful Saturdays up again, I want to encourage you to come and to watch these last 2 videos with us, because they are absolutely powerful. So I'm going to share some things specifically that she says. So here's how she starts. She says, do you feel the passion within urging you to live the greater story of your life? Myth is always about the making of the soul. It is the journey of the heroic soul as you travel from outmoded existence to an amplified life. And in times of breakdown and breakthrough, which we are in right now, myths arise to telling us of the new heroes, the new heroines, and the noble journey which we must take in search of the possible human, both within ourselves and in others. How do we evoke this emergence? How do we inspirit this possible, passionate human so that we may not just survive our time, but thrive, leaving as our legacy a new way of being for our children and our grandchildren in the future? It is only when we have discovered the possibility that we can go beyond our pessimism and create a world in which we make a difference. You have the capacity to do some good in the world, to do brilliant and beautiful things. I'm going to invite you to turn to somebody and say, you're going to do brilliant things. Yeah. We are the most non-rule following group of people. I'm kidding. That was fun. I love how we expand on that. Okay, so we're going to take a look at The Wizard of Oz through the eyes of Jean Houston, with some scripture put in there as well. So first we're going to go to the beginning of the movie and the black and white, the gray Kansas. And what this represents sometimes that point in our life where we feel this quiet desperation, a time when we're kind of just doing things because we're doing them and we're not really engaged in our lives, where we're maybe feeling overwhelmed, where we just feel like maybe it's a seeking for a deeper spiritual relationship. Maybe it's just that you've been in doing your job for so long and you're ready for something new. And so that's what this represents. Now, we know that Dorothy goes and she sings about the rainbow. And the rainbow represents, one of the things it represents is that connection between the divine realm and ourselves. But the rainbow, what is said to be at the end of the rainbow? A pot of gold. And isn't that interesting? I kind of cracked me up at the first service when I realized that Why money at the end of the rainbow? It's our society is so focused. We've made money such a god. I wish there was something else at the end of the rainbow. We might have to create that. But the idea being that, that there's something more. The rainbow represents that there's something more. And so we kind of have this something that is starting to emerge, and we're feeling kind of this restlessness, and we can feel that something is going to happen, and then whoa, the winds of change come in. And sometimes it feels like a tornado has entered our lives, doesn't it? When there's big changes, and all of a sudden we find ourselves just as Dorothy did when she entered into the realm of the land of Oz. You're not different yet, but everything around you is different. And you're not really sure how to even be in that experience because it's so different from what you have been in. And nothing looks the same anymore. Nothing feels the same anymore. So Miss Dorothy is us. She represents us. And also, in most mythical stories, and we see this all the time, I watch a lot of kids' movies, the heroes, they're generally, and a lot of the heroines are generally, these outwardly powerful heroes. And they're taking care of things with power and with force, and a lot of times with, a lot of physical things going on. But Dorothy represents a new paradigm for us. And Dorothy is a compassionate hero. And throughout the story of The Wizard of Oz, we see that she is filled with this compassion and this kindness. She is filled with this connection. And when you look at the story, you see that the reason that she was even spurred to take the scarecrow off of his perch was because of compassion. And when she oiled the Tin Man, that was out of compassion. And love and kindness was just part of what her journey was about throughout the entire story of this. And think about when the Cowardly Lion attacks Toto. And, at that moment, as soon as her precious Toto is being attacked, she grabs Toto and she slaps the lion right on the nose, perfectly placed slap, but not out of aggression or domination, but because of her love and her compassion for Toto. And then even when we get to the point when she's at the end of the movie and the Wicked Witch, and the Wicked Witch, and she grabs the bucket of water and she pours it on the witch and the witch melts, it was because out of her compassion for her friend that he was on fire. It was all, everything that she did came from a place of compassion and a place of loving kindness. And I believe more than anything, this is what we're called to today, is to really move into that greater space of loving kindness and connection and compassion and being able to see and be with people who are so different than us. Do you think that she was with some people who were different than her? Yeah, being able to really be with them. I got to tell you too, when the whole thing about the witch and the water kind of hit me when I was researching this, that in this particular show, that there's the good and there's the evil, and the water is what melts the evil. And I thought how interesting it is when we look at traditional Christianity, there's God and there's the devil, and we are baptized. And it's through baptism that we are born again. And I was thinking about, for me, the witch represents the ego gone mad. It represents those times in our lives. And even if it's things we've only thought, and don't try to tell me you've never thought these things, when you're just like, want what you want and you'll do anything to get it. You just want what you want, and you'll, walk over people. And like I said, maybe you didn't do it, but, sometimes we have those thoughts in our minds. And then we're baptized with water, which represents where it's the spiritual cleansing. When we finally get it and we start turning within and we start doing our spiritual practice, and that brings the ego back to a more centered place, where now we're coming from our center rather than allowing the wicked witch of us to be out there running around. Okay, Glinda, the good witch, represents a benign protector. She's just always there for Dorothy. Now, also, and I love how she talks about this, this is the word entelechy. And the word entelechy is a Greek word that means the fullest realized essence of a thing. So the oak tree, the full-grown oak tree, is the entelechy of the acorn. So Glenda represents the potential of us. She represents the goodness and, again, the kindness. She represents the power. She represents what we, you and I, what we have the opportunity to become. And I love that. I love that is part of who we are. That's part of our spiritual DNA. And Jean goes on to say, this entelechy of us, it's our best friend and our ally. It's guiding us and watching over us. And Glenda was always watching out for Dorothy, but Dorothy didn't know it. Isn't that an interesting thought? And I'm going to read this to you. She says, she is a gentle guide who allows Dorothy to learn and become stronger through her trials. She does not interfere with the process of Dorothy discovering who she really is through both the adversity and the good experiences she has with her new friends in Oz. However, when things get tough and Dorothy cries out for help, Glenda then shows up. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Source, whatever you want to call it. And the beautiful thing is, I think sometimes in New Thought, people get the idea that, I've got this down and I'm not going to have to go through these kind of rocky times in my life. And I'm going to tell you that that's not true. The beautiful thing about this spiritual journey is that we fortify ourselves with these spiritual teachings, with these spiritual tools, so that when things do come up in our lives and we're blown around and we're knocked down, that we have these tools to help us navigate through. But it's these experiences that grow us, right? I mean, the opportunity for growth is always there no matter what. Yellow brick road. The yellow brick road is the path out before us, represents, that which is like possible. There's something that I'm moving towards, something that's pulling me towards it. And we get to a fork in the road, and, then we're going to get to another fork in the road and another fork in the road. And, along our way, we'll have someone like the scarecrow to come and say this way or that way. Ultimately, we have this inner something that guides us. Here's the thing I want to tell you. We get to a fork in the road and we're like, oh, which way should I go? Which way should I go? Okay, I'm going to go this way. And maybe the easier path would have been to go this way. You can't get it wrong. You can never get it wrong, because our entelechy, that which is our potential and possibility, is always going to guide us to that greater path no matter what. And whatever path we choose, guess what we get? Feedback. Simply feedback. And we get to say, oh, this is my favorite thing to say, that was interesting. Because you can use that word interesting in a gazillion ways. That was interesting. Interesting. That was interesting. And then we move forward from there. And I love that Proverbs 3:6 says, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. When we're really doing our spiritual work, when we're putting that essence of God first, we will be guided. Well, so first she comes to the scarecrow, and the scarecrow says, if I only had a brain. Exactly. And I love when she goes up to him and he's talking, and she said, well, it doesn't sound like you don't have a brain. And his words were, sometimes people without brains do an awful lot of talking. And so the idea here being, how often do we say, I'm not smart enough, I don't have what it takes, I'm not brilliant enough, I'm not quick enough to deal with the daily ordeals of life. And what the scarecrow really requires is a transformation of awareness of what he really has, and which is a great transformation for all of us. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. And then we get to the Tin Man. If I only had a... Yes. Now, I'm going to read this to you. He may represent the mechanization of our reality with the loss of heart, which the loss of heart is the worst to bear. It's easy enough to get oiled and moving, but without heart, there is no impetus to keep us growing. And I just got so tickled by reading this. Machines of all kinds were entering life in 1900 and doing jobs previously performed by humans and animals. Baum's story suggests that this might have consequences. Riding to work on an electric streetcar was very different than being pulled along in a horse-drawn cart with the horse's blood pumping through its veins. Talking to someone over the telephone was very different from speaking to them face to face. This is in 1900. And so I think it is important for us to look at today. And, technology is fantastic. It's wonderful. But there's this swing of the pendulum. And we've gotten over here where we have our faces in our electronics all the time. We're constantly being stimulated by TV, by computers, by phones, by whatever. And how many times have you gone to a restaurant, either you yourselves or you've seen people who come together to have a meal together and they're on their phones? It has created such a disconnect. And the thing that we need, you guys, is we need connection. More than anything, we need that connection. We need that face-to-face, that one-on, where we're being with each other without something coming in between that. I'm going to ask you just to point to yourself for a minute. Okay, awesome. Most, if not everybody, pointed to your heart, because we innately know that this is who and what we really are, that we are our heart. You wouldn't fall in love with somebody and say, I give you my brain for the rest of our life. I give you my heart. We get to the heart of the matter, and it's so important because the heart has the capacity to ignite passion. And what we need more than anything today, you guys, is we need that passion. We need our hearts to be ignited. And then we get to one of my favorite characters. If I only had the noive. And what did he think that he lacked? Courage, exactly. And it's a major theme of the story, not just the cowardly lion, but what we see is that over and over again, the characters are called to stand up in courage in service to each other. Now, one of the things that I love about the lion is the lion shows us that courage is not the absence of fear. And when we think about the lion, I love the visual of the lion going down the big hall, and he's going like this. I mean, his whole body is shaking, and he's visibly showing that he's so scared. And but he's continuing to go forward. Now, there were a few times he wanted to turn around, and especially that time when his tail came around and he grabbed it and he got scared and said, "Somebody yanked my tail." I love that part. But anyway, what he shows us is that even that it's okay. It's okay that we're afraid. It's okay that our heart might be beating out of our chest, or we can't think because our blood is all rushed to our brain or whatever. It's okay. The main thing is that we continue to move forward. That's what courage is. And I love that is such a great example of the lion. Courage is about stepping into your grander self, your bigger story. What are your fears? How do you limit yourself? So I want to share this with you because this is rampant in our society. One way we keep ourselves small is by thinking we're not good enough. We've talked about this. Not smart enough, gregarious enough, witty enough, savvy enough, pretty enough, educated enough, clever enough, romantic enough, endlessly not enough. When rooted in childhood, these feelings of not being enough can come from parents, teachers, authority figures, cliques we never belonged to, kids we wanted to be like, or friends who dumped us. Somewhere inside us are dreams and desires we haven't made good on because that little gnat keeps buzzing around our heads. You're not smart enough to do that. You're not clever enough. Are you kidding? You're not experienced enough for that. What does your gnat have to say? What isn't good enough about you? Who told you that? And what does it keep you from doing? And this is so important because I really believe that this is at the root of so much of the problem in our world. Because when we don't feel good enough, then people act out of that in some very negative ways. And here's the thing. There's a reason why the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So we put God first. We're making sure we're doing that. But to love your neighbor as... Because if we don't truly love ourselves, you guys, we cannot truly love other people. We can't. And so we have to come back here, and we have to have the courage to be who we are, to know that we're enough, to know that we're good enough, to know that we have what it takes, and to know that our authenticity matters because it does matter. Who you are, how you have come into this world, your talents and your attributes, it matters to the world, no matter what anybody else's talents and skills are. You absolutely matter. Now, these characters together also represent for us how important it is to have friends and to have family and to have allies, because Dorothy couldn't have done this alone. She needed to have these three wonderful, diverse characters around her. And so it's important that we make sure that we surround ourselves with people who are there to support us when we're down, but then also to help encourage us, on the way. And we're there for them as well. And then, sleeping in the poppy field, the flying monkeys. How many of us have had obstacles on our path? That's all they were. We get through those obstacles. And where do we end up? We finally get to the Emerald City. Now, the interesting thing about this is when they first get to the Emerald City, they're thinking they're going to get to see the wizard. He's going to grant them. And it's like, nope, you've got to go do this first. And so they go do that. They come back thinking the same thing. And then what happens? The wizard is the man behind the curtain. He's not at all who they thought that he was. And how many times again in our lives have we gotten somewhere and it doesn't look like we thought it was going to look? But that's, you guys, where faith comes in, and where we know that we can't even possibly imagine what God, this universe, this divine intelligence really has in store for us, because it's so much greater than we ourselves could even begin to imagine. So we continue to step forward with courage. And of course, the ultimate message of this story is you had it all along. Everything you need is inside you. You have everything that you need. It's not outside of you. And you didn't have to go to somebody outside to get it. Now, we go to each other to uplift each other, to remind each other, but all your power is right here. And that sounds really similar to the kingdom of God is within you. Isn't that interesting? All that you've ever needed is right here, and it's right within you. So I'm going to close. I want to read a couple of things to you, because I cannot do it as well as she does, because she's so spirited. But she does an amazing job in how she presents this. So she says it's time for a renaissance. And why a renaissance? Because when the time is ripe for renovation, that which is needed will arise from the soul of the world, the cosmic agenda, and the depths of ourselves to supply it. People grow laconic, bored, driven to outrage and hysteria if the impetus to newness and renewal goes too long wanting, too long waiting. Cultures fall into chaos. Economic and psychological depression, as well as violence, rule the day. But a renaissance is literally a rebirth of an outmoded, dying, or impossible situation. It is when the soul grows and becomes equal to the challenges, indeed becomes able to lift and enlighten, and offers new ways of being and doing. Hold on a second. Along the yellow brick road of this journey into Oz, we have learned to expand our brains and hearts and find the courage to move forward into the grandest version we dare imagine of the possible world. And it's up to us to imagine that grandest version. As newly activated beings, we stand ready to re-green the wasteland of our former lives and step into our roles as wizards in a time in which our talents are very much needed. Nothing less than all of the magic at our command is required at this time. We find ourselves entering into this great new renaissance filled with the dynamic power of intention and the power of choice. Together, we are the ones who create this new Emerald City in which all may live in health, connection, and balance with each other and the world. So what does this better world look like to you? Perhaps we should put on our emerald glasses with their green lenses once again Together, we are the ones who Imagine what the new world might look like through the green lens, wherein that might allow us to see and create a sustainable and peaceful world differently, and to see others differently as well. The great divide between the very rich and the very poor in America today is reminiscent of the times of the French Revolution, and we all know what happened then. Abject poverty not only encourages crime, but also prompts people to numb their reality. Nearly half of nonviolent inmates in our nation's prisons are imprisoned on minor drug charges. We must, as a people, discover new ways of making our lives vital and potent without the need to medicate ourselves into a stupor. Imagine people turning off their television sets, tossing out the drugs and alcohol, and expressing themselves in original, creative ways that fire up their souls. Imagine the children being allowed to explore and experiment in the arts and sciences in schools without pressure to perform or engage in stress-producing competition for grades. Sorry, I'm starting to sound nasally because it's getting in my nose. The new Renaissance requires exciting, relevant forms of education that spark and fuel passion in our young people. Imagine the kind of education that Dorothy would have had in Kansas, bleak and dry, as gray as the world around her. What is needed is a whole system of education that is cooperative, not competitive, and is based on real-life experiences, with initiations and tests that hone the spirit and abilities, that encourages the expansion of creativity and the imagination, that offers exploration and resourceful ways of solving problems and the overcoming of seemingly insurmountable odds. Through our green lens of a renaissance of being, we might see a world where diversity is valued and where people work together to create sustainable housing, farming, alternative forms of energy and transportation, thus creating more jobs and a stronger economy. It might be a place where justice, compassion, and tolerance are prevailing constructs. This greening of our world might create a new green architecture, such as that found in biomimicry. People in this new Emerald City are eager to learn about cultures other than our own, which creates more compassion and understanding. We see each other in all of our fullness. The portrayal of men and women in the media is greatly expanded to reflect more than youth and beauty in formerly traditional limiting roles. The elderly are seen as vital assets to the well-being of their communities, assisting in the raising of the children and honored for their life experience and wisdom. Amen? Amen. Birth is seen as a natural human function rather than a medical condition requiring all types of intervention. Death is also viewed as a natural part of our human journey, not something to be feared. People are supportive of local farmers and business people. They work to keep themselves healthy with exercise and food that is not laden with chemicals. We are the ones who can make this happen. The time has come to align our local selves with our mythic, limitless selves to unlock our greatest destiny. Each of us must decide what we want our lives to stand for, how we can uniquely contribute to a better world. We must think about our lives in terms of how we can live more fully, enhancing not only our own experiences, but those of our families, our communities, and the planet as well. By thinking about what we can provide for the next generation rather than what we can hoard for ourselves in this lifetime, we are choosing to create our own destiny instead of leaving our children's future up for grabs. Can we come each day from a place of beauty, energy, power, grace, passion, and most important, joy, while we do our soul's work for the good of the whole? Yes, we can. Powerful. And this is what we are called to do. I can look at this story of the Wizard of Oz and see that it is exactly what it is calling us to do, to rise up. We are ready to be more than we have ever been, to do more than we have ever done, to speak more than we have ever spoken, to stand more solidly and together than we have ever stood, because you and I, we are the ones who can make a difference in this world, and we can no longer sit by and wait for somebody else to do it. We cannot sit and think, my voice doesn't matter. We can't sit and do nothing. We are the ones here right now who can start this change happening. And when we raise up our energy, when we raise up our voices, when we raise ourselves up and stand together, it raises everything else around us. And we cannot discount the impact of that. And we need it today more than ever. And you and I, we have chosen to be here. We have chosen to be here for a reason. And I don't care how young you are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you have ever done in your life. You matter today. Amen. And as the elders of our world, if you can impart your wisdom to the rest of us, that makes a huge difference in how we can move forward from here. So my call to you today is, are you ready to Ozify your life? Yeah? Well, let's all move into a great Ozification and be more than we've ever been before. And namaste, namaste.